It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, friends. I am Rob, and this is my State of the Dungeon address. This is for the game that took place on the 28th of July in the year 2022. The game was 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons using the Dragon Heist storyline. All characters were in attendance, all players were there. So, the game opened up where the last one had ended. Even though a couple of the players weren't there, notably Luxor and Samuel, this time the group started out in media res with the house of the widow that the gang they had overthrown were residing, as they contemplated the loot that the gang had stolen, and figured out how to steal as much of it for themselves before the guards came in and tried to make sure that the proper people had it. A chance to get their stuff back. So the group had a chance to look around. First of all, I gave everybody a chance to do what they wished to do. And while there was a little dithering about, the specifics, like wanting to find books, and they found some nice books. They also found a trunk full of wine that the gang had looted, so they took some of that. And they also found a bolt of very, very valuable cloth, which they also took. Smuggled it out, actually. Samuel wrapped himself up in it and then put his clothes back on. It was interesting as a tactic, and it worked. Especially because he could cast Disguise Self and camouflage that he was actually wound up in a bolt of fabric. So the group ends up on good terms with the town guard. They get out with their machinations in place. They are warned by the inspector, since they were witnesses and everything, not to leave town, but it's not really a danger at this point. So, they head back. After, of course, filling in Samuel and Luxor and all the things that took place the previous session, which was quite a lot. But they got back to the to Trollskull Manor, where they found that Max, their halfling sorcerer security of sorts, was playing cards with Khalees, their live-in. Yeah, it sounds weird, but he is their live-in artificer. And they started breaking down the stuff that they had and sharing out. And they realized that they were on the crux of getting out of their financial woes. The bolt of fabric they got was worth quite a bit of money. The guns that they had recovered from the drow could be sold for quite a bit of money. It turns out they were not the ornate guns that had been stolen from Zardoz Zard, but they were still guns. And the Temple of Gond is pretty keen on stopping them from becoming just common murderers' weapons. They want to keep them as precious artifacts of Gond's work. So they will pay to recover guns found out in the wild. So, the group had to think about what to do. First of all, it turns out Luxor wanted a gun. Which is interesting because, generally he also values stealth, and a gun is the antithesis of stealth. But he wanted one. It's a good damaging weapon, and even though it's expensive, it's, still pretty decent. Plus, he ended up getting the 2 poison shots that the assassin had. So, all things considered, he ended up paying a pretty penny back to the group, but he got the weapons he wanted. The group had plans. In the morrow, they were going to have Samuel go and sell the things for them, since turns out he's adept at pricing things. And, he seems to have a pretty glib tongue and be friendly enough to get people to be sympathetic towards him. So that was a good idea. And also they knew in the morning they had to go and carry through on their work for the Lord's Alliance, watching the dung sweepers out on the docks, because the Zentarum supposedly were causing trouble. So, they slept, they woke up, quick meal. Again, it's awfully nice to have Jay Zor with his cooking skills be able to give them great meals at a moment's notice without having to, go through any trials themselves. And they go to the Mighty Mule or Drunken Mule or something tavern, where they find the dung sweepers for the day, who go off to their task knowing that these adventurers are protected. So that's all good. They all get to see different things when they're there because it's a 2-hour shift and they get to see the docks in the morning. So, for instance, going around the table, the first person was Zarya, and the first thing she sees are a couple of barbarians who come in off a boat. These look like very, very odd barbarians. They're wearing lots and lots and lots of gold. They're carrying a healthy amount of gold on them, and they wear very little clothing, despite the fact that it's still quite chill. They are wearing basically the male is bare-chested, the female is wearing light clothing in the chill spring air. And she ends up noticing that they are covered in all kinds of very macabre tattoos, scenes of death and dismemberment and skulls. Zarya decides she's going to say hi. The barbarians look at her like she's a piece of filth, and they tell her to go away. They actually ask her to fight, but Zarya knows that she doesn't want to get on the bad side of the guards, and she's not going to throw the first punch, even after they call her and her people weak. Eventually she figures out that they are of, well, the one names the tribe he comes from, the Frusties, who are found in the World's Spine Mountains. They challenge the Goliaths for being in some of the harsher environments, but they don't have the bloodline to back that up. They're just humans. So they are very tough, and they have a very, very fearsome reputation of not only are they, bloodthirsty and show no pity or quarter, but they're just as merciless to their own people. So they are not to be trifled with, usually. Zarya did not give them the benefit of combat, so no fight was had, and they went off on their own after calling her a coward. Aldrich saw that there were some crates from the Cartographers Guild that were being loaded onto a boat, but even though it's odd for the cartographers to ship large quantities of something here and there, didn't really sink in too far. Jay Zor saw something too, but a little tired right now. Anyhow, Loxor rolled a natural 20, so he noticed pretty much all the things all the others saw. He noticed, though, that the crates from the Cartographers Guild were counterfeits. Ah. And so, he thought he would pursue and see what profit could be made off of it, using his Mask of a Thousand Faces to become as a guard, and he moved up and challenged to see what was in the crates. The person who was attending the crates did not fall for the bluff. Apparently he knew the guard that he was posing as, or was a fine bluffer himself. But he did reveal that instead of a well-rounded fellow of the Cartographers Guild who was overseeing the transfer, he revealed himself as a some sort of an illusionist, tiefling, who was running his own operation. And just so happened Loxor decided to show off his own skills, and this person identified him. We'll see if that comes through with anything else. The others got to see, a thing here or a thing there, but for the most part what they really noticed was that there really weren't a lot of threats. There wasn't anybody who looked like anybody really all that dangerous. And for the most part, everything went pretty slowly. The group was, by this time this is rather boring. It's only been exciting when the carrion crawler showed up that they got into a fight with. So, the group was done with that mission. And then they went back. A couple people peeled off to go and take care of their own things, but by this time, The one person who was not with the group was Samuel, because he had the luxury of getting up when he wanted to. He's not tied down to the Lord's Alliance's task. So instead what he noticed was that there's some goon outside the Troll Skull Alley with a sandwich board advertising the opening of a new tavern, Throon's Brews. He decided to go and check on this. So he goes down. It's just four doors down from where their manor is. And they see this place that was a small shop that has been opened up, the main floor cleared, and tables and things set up. The smell of somewhat unappealing ale wafting out. And he goes in. And he finds the person who is there is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale skin, with a thick Alaskan accent. And he introduced himself as the proprietor, Thune. And he basically, I don't know how he did it, but by just sitting there talking to him and showing interest and basically giving him everything he wanted to hear, Samuel basically heard the whole story, that this guy had come from Luskan, and he wanted to try to buy Trollskull Manor at the cheap. But it turns out that he was thwarted in this by Volotham Gadar. So he's a little bitter. So his whole point is he wants to show those stupid adventurers by opening up his own place and putting them out of business. Then he can go back and buy the manor for cheap. Not knowing, of course, that Samuel is one of their number because he's not been seen with them before. He only just met them yesterday. Well, marvelous. He also spilled that he's had problems with the guilds of the town because he comes from Luskan. They don't have this guild issue. So, as it turns out, he sidestepped them on several key issues. Buying bootleg liquor, not from the Brewers Guild. Fixing his own roof, not using the Cobblers and the Roofers Guild. Yeah. And he even has a guy with a sandwich board he's paying a silver a day to advertise his place instead of going to the couriers. So, yeah, he's stepping on everybody's feet at this point. So, they determined they're going to take care of this by alerting all the people that he should have told or worked with or whatever instead of cutting all these corners. So they're tattling. This is their thing now. Can be very effective. The guilds are very vindictive when they need to be. And this Throon's Brews is just the kind of thing that they would love to just beat down. The group has been working very hard at keeping their relationships with the guilds going okay, so they are in the right, technically. By doing everything appropriately, the guild should be on their side. So, when they convene together again, they decide they're going to all go on their separate ways. They're splitting the party, but they're in town. What bad could happen to them in the city? Right. During the day, even. I mean, come on. So, as it turns out, several of the group decide to set off and go to the Temple of the Temple of Selune, to try to sell the cloth that they had. And they are going to bring along Samuel for the salesmanship of it. He realized, with his knowledge of religions, there's a couple of temples that could use this particular cloth. It was a very fine linen shot through a silver thread. And that would be the temples of Bahamut, okay, the temple of Tamora, because some of their orders actually use white and silver as their mark, or Temple of Selune. So, we deal with this first. And we just see some of the most tragic dice rolling. Oh. Basically, as soon as he starts opening his mouth, Samuel convinces the priests who they're trying to sell to that they have killed some people, taken their cloth, and they're looking to sell it. This doesn't go over very well, and the clerics, the acolytes who are talking to them, are disturbed enough to go and find the priest. And there's poor Jazor just going, I thought you were good at this. It was so great. So the priest comes out. It's not the high priest, but it's one of the ones who oversees the younger priests. So he's kind of an over priest, but he's not the high priest. And he comes out and he's got a couple of spells up already because he doesn't know what he's dealing with. He comes out and sees Jazor looking concerned. And there's Samuel, just thinking he did a good job. And he comes out and he admonishes them. He hears the story again and he asks, which might be a fairly simple question, why didn't you try to find who these people who had been burgled of this cloth, rather than just trying to sell it and make a quick couple dragons off of it? And what were they going to say? It's true. They took it from a crime scene with the intention of padding their own pockets. It wasn't exactly a good act. And Selene is about protecting people and, shining the light on dark deeds like potentially burgling. This bolt was worth 150 gold. That could be a tradesman's profit margin there. Could be the difference between them, being financially harmed. So the priests, considering Jazor's circumstances and the fact that he looked contrite, they gave him an out. They weren't going to give him the full value of money, but they did give him 50 gold. And they said they would go and they would find who this had come from, and they would pay them when they found out who it belonged to, and they would still use the cloth. So they would make sure that the person who was stolen from was taken care of. That's kind of appropriate for Selene, I think. And they were chastened, but agreed. There was kind of a nice thing, too, where Jazor was asking about the cleric that he had trained to second level with, Gaesra? And she's an elf. She's really out of her league in the city, but she's working hard trying to overcome and broaden her horizons as part of her duties to Selene. And she's doing well. So they were gratified that he's taking an interest in his fellows of the faith, which is good. Whether it's pure and chaste interest, we'll see. But so, Loxor, of course, had to go off to the Yawning Portal Tavern. He's trying to hook up with the Zentarum contact he had, because they're the ones who actually footed their escapade to go and take on the assassin who was killing the half-elves in the town. And he went and he found Yagra. Yagra is the half-orc female who is in the tavern quite often. And he knows that she is kind of like the bodyguard to Davil Sunbow. So he goes up to her and he just bluntly says, I want to talk to Davil. And she's like, you don't talk to Davil. Davil's busy at the moment. Turned out somebody squealed on his identity to the Harpers, and they sent a few people to attack him to their own displeasure. So he's not going to talk to you. What do you want? Well, we took care of the job we were given. Well, yeah? Took you long enough. What? He's spluttering. He's angry. And she's like, look, you were given a task. You slept on it for a few days. Don't expect gratitude and applause. Here. She gave him 50 gold and said, you've now been acknowledged that you are somewhat competent. If it was going to be on a scorecard, you'd get a point. And we're being generous on that. You didn't show a great deal of initiative. That's the kind of thing that we like to see. You're a fairly competent thug, and that's about it. Oh, is he mad? He was so mad he wanted to hit her with everything. Don't know if he quite reckons that he's up to taking her on. Be an interesting fight. But he decided, nah, not right there in the Yawning Portal, and maybe there was a chance that he could get broken pretty badly. He'd seen her get into a scrap, and she took on 6 guys by herself. Even then, she was showing the signs that she'd been in another fight, so clearly she doesn't shy away from conflict. He decided discretion was the better part of valor, told her that he'd like to talk to Devril as soon as possible, because he feels that he was promised far more than 50 gold for this mission. And that's where he left off. So the rest of the group, kind of... well, actually, first of all, Felix went over to talk to the Gold Dragonborn who works at who owns the bookstore nearby, who's turning into a fine friend of the group's. He very much likes Aldrich. The only one who he's kind of holds at arm's length would be Loxor, who he suspects is, well, not to be trusted, especially since he tried breaking into his personal living quarters and ran afoul of his sepia snake sigil. But, for the most part, he likes the group. And he's also teaching their young ward Pip how to read. So he goes over and he talks to him for a bit because Felix has some questions about the wizard who owned the magical book that they had all transported into. That was a Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion in a book. And he's nervous because the book was looted of a lot of personal books. Oh, there's a note explaining where it went to. And in this, Aldrich even named himself as the person who took the books. And knowing that she is a devotee of Mystra, and she practically lives at Candlekeep, he was a bit alarmed at what might be brought down on the party as a result. And even offered up that maybe he knows somebody who could contact this woman, Festandia, and maybe, try to smooth things over. Letting know that he has a contact of a particular old, rather eccentric mage, pretty well connected. And at this, the store owner just said, I've already sent a message. As soon as I knew what it was, I sent a message. I can't send a sending spell because those don't work at Candlekeep. They're protected from a lot of divinations and the like. So, for that, I've got a message sent. It will do. She will get it, and she will know that we have it, and she will come back and get it. That's fine. As far as the burglary, she'll notice it, she'll find out about it, and she will deal with Aldrich. He signed his name to it, then it's on him. I'll tell you this, the clerics and staff of Candlekeep take copying of tomes very seriously. I mean, copying it without permission is basically stealing the information that's on it. But he understands the risks. Yes, he does. So that went off. The group had a few other ventures that they worked toward, but for the most part, there was some finishing up of the greenery around the manor. There was also the going off and visiting the various guild houses and guard station, trying to get them all after Thrune's Brews. It's truly a masterpiece of snitching, in this case, involving disguised self, and it's working very well. They've got the bee's nest all stirred up, which was funny. So finally they get together and they decide, you know what, we've got this wine. We've been busy. Very, very busy. And together we've gotten up to second level and, we've been having some great experiences. Let's just kick back for a day. Have something to drink. Talk to each other. Do stuff. So they do. They have a nice night in. They get a message from Laeral Silverhand, the Open Lord of Waterdeep, giving them a 100 gold piece, basically a thank you for taking care of the Carrion Crawler and saving the Dung Sweepers. So that basically polished off their debt, which is another reason why they felt like celebrating. Along with selling the guns back to the Priests of Gond, which they accomplished, and the priests were happy to get that back. That was pretty much what Aldrich and Zarya were doing. They didn't get a huge bounty for them, but combined with the reward and the 50 gold from the sales of the cloth, they smoothed out the debt. That was gone. Actually, even got a little bit changed back. So, yeah, they're now the owners, and they have all their bills paid for up to the repair of the place. Now all they have to do is get liquor, get all their guild certificates in order, and they'll be fine. They just need maybe even a little more money for that, but we'll see. So, the party isn't a huge thing to speak of. For the most part, it's just a bit of unwinding, which is appropriate for, characters that cut loose every now and again. And it's in the safety of the tavern, which they own. Drinking from the wine that they had looted. And some really good stuff, too. Some Briarthorn wine, which actually put them in a fine state of euphoria for a little while, for those who chose to imbibe. And for the most part, the people had little individual things to do. For example, Pip managed to try to smuggle some of his friends and his gang into the house. This was discovered. The party was not happy with having a bunch of urchins in the house, especially since Pip doesn't really have a room anymore. Not since Samul came and took his room. So they weren't real thrilled with these kids that they don't know. Interestingly enough, all the kids are armed. They all have daggers. And now they saw Pip is sporting a short sword. Yeah. Not happy with the direction this is going. And Luxor took this pretty seriously. Unfortunately, while he was disarming the urchins, they were not happy about it, but what are they going to do? He's an adult, and he's a tabaxi, and he's kind of scary. When he got to one girl, the 10-year-old girl in the group, she screamed when he grabbed her dagger. And she started making some pretty dark accusations. Bear in mind, this is Waterdeep. It is almost certain that bad things happen to kids all the time. This particular girl is known in the area for doing this, accusing adults of doing improper things with her, trying to get an edge on people and get stuff. Sometimes it works, but some people know her tricks, especially the guards. But Luxor didn't know this. So everybody dashes up to see what's going on, because it sounds pretty dire. And Luxor tries to cast a charm person spell on her, and that poor guy is like and whatever for life on those charm persons, because every time I can beat his save. So now he's trying to cast a spell on her. Even worse. That's a criminal act, by the way. But she's now legitimately screaming, and she breaks into tears. So Zarya comes in, or she runs out, and Zarya grabs her as she's running out. And a guard comes around, because he hears screaming, and comes onto the side, and he assures them that they know her tricks. She can whip up tears like that. She can be very convincing. She even had some red dust that she put on her face to make it look like she was bruised. She's pretty convincing at making herself be a victim. They managed to get their way out of the little girl's wiles, so they did that good at least. The group saw through her ruse. She, in years to come, she might be really good at it, but the group is pretty suspicious. So that happened, and now the group is like, well, now we're gonna have to find something to do. Our jobs are done. Where everything's dried out. We don't know what to do next. Well, we'll worry about that in the morning. So tomorrow. Oh, and they also got absolved of having to do any more watching over the Dung Sweepers Guild because of their good work. So now they really have nothing to do. But they're starting to feel the call to train to develop new skills. So they decided they would rest. Everybody crashes, goes to bed. And then they are all awoken. I believe almost everybody was. I think everybody was. To the sound of a large boom outside of the manor. It wasn't on the manor, didn't hit the manor, but in the street, a fireball erupted. This time the group didn't have anything to do with it. So the group runs out. The fastest people to get out there are Samuel and Aldrich, Samuel and Jazor, because they're in the upper level. So they go to the window, and Samuel casts Featherfall, and they just jump down to the ground level. Turns out that works out pretty well. Jazor is not weaponless. He actually went and got some brass knuckles made, so now he can do damage without having to carry around a weapon. He can at least do damage with his massive strength that'll put somebody out. And they got down there as the smoke was just starting to clear. They see a couple of people standing by, a small human child. Well, he's 12. He's not that small, but he's a human child. They see a well-dressed dandy who's talking to a guard who ran onto the scene. And they see the local druid who owns a greenhouse, an elf who is trying to help people. She cures a few people who were badly burned. And since the group was there, I let them do a little investigating beforehand. So they got to look at who was dead. Turns out there was an old woman who was dead. She was flung at the perimeter of the blast. There's a gnome who was dead who had a dagger in his hand. There's a couple of men with leather armor and longswords at their belts with cloaks. There's a couple of domestics, 2 women and a half-elven man wearing, basically servants' clothes. There were a group of halflings, a total of 4 halflings, 2 men, 2 women. They looked like they were reveling. And I feel like I'm missing somebody. But anyhow, after doing some quick questioning, they questioned the boy. The boy was with the halflings, who were his friends. They were celebrating after a wedding. And it was just before curfew, so they were having a little bit of a fun out in the street when the fireball got them. Sad. But when he ran to go and hide behind a rain barrel, something from the roof splashed into the rain barrel, and he had a necklace. This is a necklace with 2 garish orange beads on it. Now, of course, as soon as they got to the scene, Aldrich, being a member of the Magisters and Scribes and Scriveners, cast a spell of detect magic so that he could see what went on, and he saw the lingering after effects of a fireball, clearly. But it was a little different. It's not the fireball that somebody casts as a spell, which is over and done instantaneously. This was from a more compacted magic. He rolled so well, he determined this was from an item or a device, either a wand or some sort of other device. So when he saw that necklace of fireballs, aha! That looks like that might be the murder weapon. Also, they talked to the noble who had finished talking to the guard. He identified somebody who may have been the one who threw the offending fireball. He saw something up on the roof, which immediately, of course, Felix climbed up the wall to go and investigate, but he swore he saw something that looked like a puppet, without any strings, that threw something and then vanished. And considering also that, again, all of the luck, Samuel also got on the scene, also cast Detect Magic. When he went to go in, he made an Arcana check. He thought that the magic was necromantic that was responsible for the fireball. So when he heard about a puppet, the first thing he thought of was a carionette, which is an evil, undead automaton, basically, that looks like a very nasty puppet. So he thought, aha, that's our necromantic link. The others thought, after using minor illusion or silent image, they were able to flash a couple of possibilities, and it almost seems like the target, or the thing that the noble saw was, or the wealthy man, not noble, but the wealthy man saw was possibly a Nimblewright, who is a smaller construct that often serves as protectors, maybe even assassins, but generally lower function. They're capable of some cleverness, but not a lot of individual initiative. And Also on the scene, the guards are just coming in, starting to question, and they meet an inspector who is a fine fellow, old wizard on the scene, and happy to have Aldrich there helping. Very happy. And the sergeant who comes along with him as well. And they immediately start doing a professional crime scene investigation. So if they have anything less than a positive impression of the City Watch so far, these guys might make up for it, because they're actually ready to go and break down and find out what exactly happened, perhaps in a way that has passed by the attention of the party so far. So they are on the scene at the moment, outside of their manor, working with the Watch again to unravel this multiple homicide that happened right outside of their house. And that's where we left off for the evening. So join in next time, and we'll see exactly how much trouble the group can get themselves into this time, despite the fact they didn't do anything wrong. In the next State of the Dungeon address. I'm Rob. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, farewell.